And welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to show another example of how session state works in the Witty library. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically I have another project. This one's called session 3. I'm going to make changes to my CMake file so you can see how that works again and how you can include your classes directory. And then we'll go ahead and get started on the project. Basically what we do is we define a variable in CMake. Going to call it classes. Going to get access to the project directory or our CMake source directory. Let's put in curly braces, and then we're accessing the source directory / classes. So that defines our variable. I'm going to add in that variable that's been defined. Again, you put the variable name in curly braces. I'm going to call this classes. And then we're going to need to get access to these source files, and we put it in the file command. And this is just for our project. So the CMake source directory or the project directory / source / classes / dot cpp. And as you can see, it's already been defined. I need to actually make changes to that. It's in all my project files, but I'll do that at a later date. And as you see, that's how you actually define the source files. You define the include directories. You define the actual variable. So now that is done. Let's close that. Let's open our source file. Let's add our header and our source file again. And let's add our Hello Witty source file. And I'm not going to type in or type all that all over again. It just shows you what we need, or all our source code. This is going to do our header. We need to change the syntax highlighting. This keeps you from the compiler from seeing this file more than once. It's called inclusion, if you don't know what that is. And then basically what we need is a Witty application, our Witty application header, a Witty container widget, and a Witty push button, and a Witty text. Let's go ahead and add these. Because we're going to inherit from the Witty application class again. And of course you need the Witty container widget because you get access to, so you can get access to the root object in Witty application. The Witty push button. And you'll see the real simple example that I'm going to create. Okay, now we're going to need to add the Witty namespace. You don't have to do this. Okay, now we're going to subclass the Witty application class. Just going to call this Hello Witty again. It's not really a Hello World application. I could name it something else, but I'm not. At least not for this tutorial. Okay, I'm going to add my public and my private modifiers here. Okay, I'm going to define my constructor. I need to add our Witty environment class. Okay, now this is what we're going to do. I'm going to define our variables, our slots, and it's going to be a real simple example. It's going to have 2 buttons and a Witty text widget that's going to display a value. One button is going that you click on is going to increment our value by 5, and the other one's going to decrease it by 5. And you'll see how it just keeps the value every time we just push the button in our application. So what we need to do is I need to define a variable. I'm just going to call it value. And then I need to define a couple of buttons. I'm going to call it increase by 5. Actually, this is the convention I'm going to use. Button increase. Just going to say increase 5. Another push button. Button decrease 5. Then I'm going to create a witty text. And call it the result. And that's going to display the value onto the screen. So now that we have that, going to go to our header file, going to do the same thing, copy and paste. We don't need these defines. Change this to .cpp. Okay, and then going to include our header file. Then I'm going to do void, and this is the implementation. So actually, take that back. Let's go back to our header file. I need to define 2 slots. Again, I apologize for that. Just going to call this increase by 5. Void decrease by 5. That way we won't mix it up with our push button names. So there's your, let me slow down a little bit. Here's your integer value that's going to be held in session state. Here's our button to increase the value by 5, the button to decrease it by 5, and this is the actual result. And these are the 2 slots, one to increase the value by 5 and one to decrease the value by 5. Then back to the implementation. We need to increase by 5. Type void. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do copy and paste. We have increase by 5. Now we need to do decrease by 5. Okay, and now we just need to do the constructor. And again, I'm going to do some copy and pasting here. Okay, here's the constructor. As you can see, it inherits from the witty application class. We go ahead and set the environment variable that's going to be passed into it. I'm going to change this to session state and close our parentheses. Okay, now that we have that, now we need to actually initialize our button and our witty text. So if we go ahead, and what I want to do is, you can go under the view menu and click on move to split view. That splits the view so you can see both files at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and initialize our buttons. So button increase 5 is going to equal to a new push button. Going to call this +5, and we need to add this to our widget hierarchy of root. And again, remember, we have inherited from the Witty application class, so it automatically gets access to root by default. And now we're going to call this, I should say, well, no, I'll just keep it that way. And then we add this to root. So +5, -5, and then I actually want to initialize our result. Add it to root. We're not going to set a value for it. I think up under that I'm going to do new Witty break. I don't know if this is going to work, because I've had problems with Witty break in some instances, but this should create two buttons side by side. Then that should create a new HTML break, and then this should initialize our Witty text that should be up under our buttons and adds it to the widget hierarchy. Then we have our two slots. We haven't defined what they do yet, but here are our two slots. And if we go ahead and define what they do, basically I want to increment our value. I shouldn't say that. Value is equal to itself +5. If we go here, value is equal to itself -5. So every time you click on this, it should increase value by 5 or decrease it by 5, and it'll hold that information every time you call these two slots. Just want you to see that. Okay, now that we have defined our button, and again, I don't want to be all over the place with this. Let's go ahead and connect our signals and slots. Increase 5. Here's our click signal dot connect. And again, this is this object because it's being connected to this class, our application class. And we're going to get a reference to our slots. So in this case, it's going to be hello Witty, increase by 5. And then we're going to add our signal click to our button decrease 5. We have this, hello Witty, and decrease by 5. I'm going to try to keep from going all over the place. So basically what we have done is we have initialized our buttons, added a HTML break, initialized the actual result that'll be displayed on the screen. We have added our signal clicked to our slot called increase by 5 and decrease by 5 depending on our button for our two buttons. Now we just need to define what happens. Now I went up here and told you that value is going to be increased by 5, so it takes itself, value is equal to itself plus 5, and then value is equal to itself minus 5. So now let's finish the implementation for our slot. What we want to do is take this value, the result, and say result, set the text, do a Witty string, create a placeholder, and then add the argument for where the placeholder is going to be. Then we're going to do a copy and a paste, and it's the same thing. So This is really where the magic happens. This is nothing new. We're just setting the value of the witty text widget. So we take the result, set the text to our integer, and again, this value is going to be constant every time the application is run for as long as it is alive. So if we save this, cross our fingers, hopefully this will run. And then if we go to our source file, we delete this. We've inherited from our witty application, and that's the name of our class. Pass in the environment variable. We don't need the witty label. We don't need a container widget. We just need our header file. Hello Witty. Everything's been saved. Let me drag this up here and move this out of the way. We don't need a split screen anymore. Check this, make sure it returns a Witty application class, which is Hello Witty. So if we go ahead and run CMake and compile it, again, cross our fingers. Hopefully we don't get any errors. Looking good. Okay, we didn't get any errors that time. We close the window. Let's see, I had a server instance running. If I run this, as you can see, Windows is prompting me. Allow access to the firewall. This is our previous application. If I do a refresh, okay, now you see our two buttons. Hopefully you can see our two buttons. And we have +5 and we have -5. So if we click on +5, it should display the value of 5 on the screen. Then again, I think I know why. That's not a value. Let's not close this. Let's shut down the server. I know why. I did not give value a default value. So if we go back to our constructor, what we'll do here is we declared value, but we didn't actually set it to a default value of 0. So remember that if you declare it, you have to actually, you can declare it, you can't actually give it a default value in C++ like you can in other languages. And then once you declare it, you actually have to give it a default value in your constructor. So remember that you can declare it in the header, at least for a value class, and then you have to actually give it a value in the constructor or wherever you're going to call the function or subroutine. So let's try it again. Let's compile it. And that's not too bad. I only had one error, and that was a runtime error. Now if I run the server again, and let me see if I can pull it up. And let's try it again. Okay. See if we do +5, there's 5, 10, 15, 20. We subtract 5, 15, 10, 5, 0, -5, -10. And as you can see, all it is doing, because session state is built into the Witty library, as long as this application is running, as long as the Witty application is running and the server is running, it'll hold that value in the application. It'll hold value. We call it value. But it'll hold whatever variable that you have, so you can have multiple instances or multiple variables that'll hold information. It doesn't have to be just an integer. It can be text. It can be, data from a database somewhere. As long as the application is running, it'll hold that information. So this is really a simple example of how to use session state. We've seen it with our Hello World program of displaying your name. Now you're seeing with value classes like an integer. I mean, you could use anything. And basically, you can either inherit from a Witty application class, like we've done here, and you'll see a lot of this as we go along in our tutorials. Or you can inherit from a Witty widget. In this case, we'll be inheriting from a Witty container widget later on. So you can create your own widgets. We can have buttons, labels, can display animation, can display colors on the screen, whatever you want to do. If you define variables in that class that inherits from a class, this type of class right here, Witty container widget or a push button, it'll hold that state in the application for as long as the session is alive and up and running. So you've seen 2 examples of how session state is available to you in the Witty library, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Have a good day.